2 years of saving, and it feels like nothing changed. Early on, compounding is barely doing any work. You are, and almost nobody tells you that, so almost everybody quits 10 feet before it flips. I learned that sitting in a grocery store parking lot, staring at my account, waiting for the number to finally feel like something. It didn't. No little jolt. No, oh, nice. I'd braced for a feeling and the floor never moved. But that dead, flat feeling, the one that makes you wonder if you're doing this right, is not you failing. It's the system working exactly the way it's built to. And once you understand the point where it flips, the first $100,000 finally makes sense. I'm Cole. This is the Money Professor, where we dig out the stuff under the spreadsheet, the part that actually explains your life. Here's what was really going on under that flat balance. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That night I did the petty thing. The thing the miracle of compound interest people basically dared me to do. I pulled out just the growth, not the money I'd deposited. 2 years of saying no to stuff, all of that. Just what my money had earned on its own while I wasn't looking. A few $100. 2 years? All I had to show for it was a few $100s. And that's not me being unlucky. Run year one cold and you'll watch it happen to anyone. Put in $1,000 a month, 12 grand of your own cash, earn the long run market average, and the growth on top comes out to around $560. $560. Which means about 95% of everything you built that year wasn't compounding at all. It was just you moving money from one pocket to another. The magic everyone sold you contributed a rounding error. That's the jolt, and here's the picture that explains it. Your money sits at the bottom of a hill, and two engines push it up. Engine 1 is you, your contributions, the cash you put in. Engine 2 is the market, the growth on the money that's already up there. The entire game comes down to one question. Which engine is doing the pushing? And early on, it's almost all you. The market engine is barely turning over. 12 grand from you, 560 from the market. You're the engine. The market's along for the ride. The reason is almost stupidly simple once somebody says it out loud. Returns are a percentage of what you already have. 10% of a giant pile is a giant number. 10% of a tiny pile is a tiny number. The percentage never changes. 10 is 10 whether you've got 5,000 or 5 million. But 10% of almost nothing is almost nothing. Quick flag, because I'll come back to it. That 10% is the nominal return, the number you actually see on your statement before we adjust for inflation. Hold that thought. The point stands. Early on, you don't have a returns problem. You have a balance problem. And there's exactly one thing that fixes a small balance. You, your deposits. That's the only engine that's running. So when you're in that parking lot feeling nothing, staring at the number, you're not broken. The market engine genuinely isn't pushing yet. You're living in what I call the contribution-dominated phase, the stretch of the hill where your deposits are the entire story and returns are background noise. And this is the exact part the hype videos refuse to show you. They cut straight to the top of the hill, the steep drop where 100 grand rolls into 1,000,000 while you nap. They edit out the long, uphill grind first, and that edit, cutting the boring climb, is what makes you feel broken while you're standing in the middle of it. Now here's the number where everything turns. I call it the crossover point. The crossover point is the spot on the hill where the second engine finally outpushes the first, the exact balance where 1 year of growth beats 1 year of your contributions. Below it, you're pushing. Above it, the hill starts pushing you, and you can find yours in about 5 seconds. Take what you put in over a year and divide it by your return rate. That's the whole formula. Let me run it for 3 different people so you can find yourself in here. Person 1 makes about 50 grand, single, and is doing the thing I'd actually recommend, putting away 20% of their pay, 10 grand a year. Divide by 10% by 0.10, and their crossover is $100,000, right at the finish line. Person 2 is our running example. 1,000 a month, 12 grand a year divided by 0.10. Crossover, 120,000. Person 3 is a 2-income household pulling around 130 grand together, putting away about 2,000 a month. 24 grand a year divided by 0.10. Crossover, $240,000. Now look at what just happened, because it's the opposite of what you'd guess. The person saving the most has the highest crossover. The bigger your shovel, the further up the hill the easy part sits. So none of them, not the 50K saver, not the household doing $2,000 a month, none of them gets the free ride during their first 100K. Every one of them wins that entire first 100K by pushing. The hill doesn't care how much you make. It only measures whether your pile is big enough yet. And through the first $100,000 for everybody, it isn't. The spot where it finally gets easy sits at that finish line at the very best, and for the bigger earners, well past it, never before it. That's not bad luck. That's the geometry of the hill. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's late business partner, one of the sharpest money minds of his generation, said it flat out. The first 100,000 is a bitch. But you gotta do it. He wasn't being dramatic. He was describing this exact spot on the hill. So here's the real question. If the first $100,000 gets won almost entirely by your pushing, not by clever investments, not by the market, then what should you actually do? Because nearly all the standard advice is built for the top of the hill, not the climb. Let me take the 3 things you've heard most and run each one against the math, and watch how the stakes climb as we go. Start with the most popular one, the lowest stakes one. Focus on returns. Find the right funds. Optimize your portfolio. On the climb, that's polishing the engine that isn't running. Watch. You've got 30,000 invested and you brilliantly squeeze out an extra 1%. 1% of 30 grand is $300 a year. Now find an extra 200 a month to put in instead. That's 2,400 a year. 8 times the impact, and it's fully in your hands, while that extra 1% mostly isn't. Early on, your savings rate is your portfolio. So don't spend the climb hunting for 0.5%. Spend it pushing harder. Fine. Low stakes, easy fix. It climbs from here because the second thing you've been told is sneakier and it costs more. And it's the one nobody warns you about because it doesn't sound like a mistake. It sounds like maturity. Time and compounding will do the work. Just relax. Half true, and the false half eats years. Yes, compounding does the heavy lifting, eventually, but eventually lives on the far side of the crossover. Telling someone in year 1 to sit back and let compounding work is like telling someone halfway up the hill that the car will coast on its own. Sure it will, but not until you shove it over the crest. On the climb, you are the compounding. And here's the trap inside the trap. Relax quietly becomes skip a month, and skip a month becomes a stalled engine on a hill, which doesn't just pause your progress. It rolls you backward, so you don't run this on willpower. Willpower is a terrible engine for something that takes years. You'll have a bad month. You'll have a bad quarter. You build a system instead, automate the transfer for the day you get paid before the money lands in checking and starts whispering at you. Then you stop touching it. That's the whole job. The amount can be small. The automation is what does the work because it takes the daily decision away from the version of you who's tired and wants takeout. Systems beat willpower, and the climb is the best proof of that rule you'll ever get. But the most expensive thing you've been told isn't advice at all. It's a voice in your own head, and it shows up sounding like the smartest person in the room. Picture it. You're 28. The raise is coming next year. Money's a little tight. And a calm, reasonable voice says, just wait. Start saving for real once you earn more. Why grind now on a small income when you'll have a bigger shovel soon? It feels like patience. It feels like the responsible adult finally showing up. It is the single most expensive sentence in personal finance, and the crossover is what exposes it. Because the first 100K is a years-long climb no matter how big your shovel gets. Almost all of it is your contribution stacking up over time. So every year you wait isn't a year you save later. It's a year of climbing you can never buy back. A bigger shovel is great, but you can't dig with a shovel you haven't picked up. Someone who starts today at $200 a month, small, almost embarrassing, has the clock running and the engine warm. Someone who waits 3 years for the perfect salary is starting the hardest, slowest part of the climb 3 years late, and no raise on earth refunds those 3 years. The amount you start with barely matters. The date you start is everything. So pick a number you can do this week, not the impressive number, the real one, and start the engine. The voice telling you to wait is the most expensive thing in this entire video, and it costs you nothing to ignore. Now let me keep the promise I owe you. Here's where the hill turns. That first 100 grand, 1,000 a month, 10%, takes about 6 years and 2 months. Over that whole climb, you personally put in around $74,000. So your first 100K is roughly 74% you. 26% growth. You carried it. Of course it felt heavy. You were the engine the entire way. Now, watch what happens on the other side. The second 100,000, 100 to 200K, same 1,000 a month, same 10%, does not take another 6 years. It takes about 3 years and 10 months, almost half the time. And this time, you only supply about 46,000 of it. The market supplies the other 54. The engine's flipped. The second 100K is mostly the hill pushing, not you. That's the crossover paying off in real life. Same effort from you, half the time. And now the hill is doing most of the work, and it keeps accelerating. 200 to 300 grand is under 3 years. You climb the steepest part first. Everybody does. The reward for finishing it is that you never have to push that hard for 100 grand again. And there's a quiet moment nobody warns you is coming. One ordinary Tuesday, somewhere past the crossover, you'll open your account, maybe sitting in a parking lot same as I was, and the market will have handed you more in a single day than you used to be able to save in a whole month. You won't have lifted a finger. The hill just did it. And that's the feeling you were reaching for in year one and didn't get. It was never missing. It was just up the hill, waiting for the pile to get big enough. That's the day the second engine takes over for good. And the only reason it ever arrives is that you spent the boring years pushing when the hill gave you nothing back. The flat climb isn't the price of admission to the easy part. The flat climb builds the easy part. One honest note, so I'm not selling you a fantasy. If you can't do 1,000 a month, the timeline stretches. At 500 a month, it's closer to 10 years to the first 100K. But here's the consolation. Your crossover actually drops to 60,000 because 6,000 a year divided by 10% is 60 grand. Smaller pushes, earlier crest, longer climb. And remember that 10%, it's nominal before inflation. In today's purchasing power, the real return runs closer to 7%. So the honest timeline is a touch longer than the headline. I'm not hiding that, but none of it changes the shape of the hill. 2 engines, 1 crossover, and the first 100K is always the part where you do the pushing. For everybody, at every income. So here's the fix. 3 steps, 10 minutes, and you do it today. 1. Calculate your crossover. What you put in over a year divided by 0.10. That's the balance where the hill starts pushing back for you. Write it where you'll see it. 2. Automate the contribution. If your savings rate is under 20%, start closing that gap now. Pick a number you can actually do, even 200 a month, and move it on payday before it lands in checking and starts whispering at you. The amount can be small. The automation is the whole job. 3. Escalate it. Raise the amount at every raise or every 90 days, whichever comes first, and stop grading these early years by your returns. On the climb, returns are a liar. They'll tell you nothing's working. Grade your contribution rate instead. That's the only engine you control, and right now it's the only one building anything. Once the dollars are moving, the order you deploy them, which account first, is its own video. But that's a problem for after the engine's running. Start the engine, because the people who quit the first 100K don't quit because the math failed them. They quit because nobody told them the climb was normal, that it was a phase with a name and a crest, not a verdict on them. Now you know. The flat part isn't proof you're doing it wrong. It's the toll you pay once to ride free for the rest of your life, and you just got handed the map through it. So use it. Run your number right now while it's in your head. Yearly contribution divided by 10%. Then drop that crossover number in the comments. Just the number, nothing else. I want to see how close to the crest this audience really is, because my bet is it's closer than you think. And if this is the frame that finally made the slow part make sense, if the first 100K is 74% you rearranged something in your head. Subscribe, because that's the whole channel, the layer under the spreadsheet that nobody bothered to explain. I'll see you at the crossover. I'm Cole. This is the Money Professor.